Hello. Let me just have my mouth has suddenly gone very dry. You're a bonny bunch, aren't you? I haven't seen you from this vantage point before, but yeah, it's nice to be here. Thank you very much to Ellen and Michelle for inviting me along. Yes, I'm Martin, and I'm going to talk to you about. I'm going to hopefully keep pointing in this direction as well. If I don't, please just shuffle me or point in that direction, and I'll write myself. But yeah, I'm going to talk to you about beyond components, building accessible experiences. So yeah, I guess I'll start with a little bit about me. If you're interested, I guess I've got your attention, your captive audience. So here we go. How long have we got? Was it half an hour? Okay. So no, it'll be half a minute at best. So yeah, I've been spent about half a decade in the private sector, helping lots of different product teams to kind of ship accessible things. I was an accessibility specialist there. Me and a little squad of other specialists did as best we could, and left things in a better shape last summer when I left. I am also an interaction designer, which I've gone back to, having done that before my previous role. It's a lot of fun. It's loads of fun and very accessibility focused as well, which was right up my street. And the last thing to mention about myself is, and this is probably queuing up a few things that might have seemed random otherwise, but yeah, I love Star Wars and I love Lego, and Lego Star Wars may become a bit of a theme here. But yeah. So yeah, it's I'm kind of glancing in this direction because I'm very curious as to what these captions do with my amazing accent. I've lived in Newcastle for 20 odd years, and Scottish, Geordie, not sure what it's going to make of that. But let's see how far we can push it. Oh, audio description as well. You probably you might want to know what I look like. I'm not going to tell you how gorgeous I am, but I've got this lovely, beautiful, lustrous head of hair. It's no, I'm a kind of a middle of the road looking bald guy with a beard. Someone says gorgeous, thank you. I'll pass you that tenner afterwards. But yeah, so today I'm going to talk to you about three things. I'm going to talk to you about a lot of things, but it kind of divides nicely into three kind of sections. Why components feel like a solution, or the solution, where component-centric accessibility breaks down, and accessibility beyond components. I feel like I have, every time I want to say beyond components, some kind of dramatic sci-fi kind of way there. But yeah, so I'm going to start off with a quote from me. You can quote me on this if you like. There is no such thing as an accessible component library. And this kind of comes from bitter personal experience. These are just some examples. I know Simon didn't use the Spider-Man thing for fear of copyright kind of lawsuits, but here we are. These are three component libraries. Bootstrap, I don't know, Storybook's not quite a component library, it's more complicated than that. But so you've got Bootstrap, Storybook, and Material UI. Those three things are examples of component libraries. I dealt with some people in my last role who were selling third-party kind of people, talking about third-party integrations. They weren't one of these three, but they were selling themselves as this accessible solution. The first thing I did was check, just with the keyboard, if any of these components worked. Most of them didn't. And then I tried this. I didn't take very long with a screen reader just to sort of see that, of course, it doesn't work. But even if it had worked, that's not a solution. That's just a good starting point if they were usable with assistive tech and accessible. But yeah, even if they were accessible, they can't be accessible. And let me explain. So first of all, it does feel like that's the solution. Components do feel like something that you can use to make something accessible, and you're done. But components are a lot like a Lego brick. So this is the from 1961, I think it was the US Patent Office application for a Lego brick. They're very detailed, very precision engineered, and this is just a lot like the sort of components that we build or we might consume. But, well, oh no, not but yet, because they're consistent, that's a good thing. They're reusable, so you can use them at scale, you can use them across products, across teams, they're all going to be the same, people know what to expect. They're very testable, so you can do that with lasers maybe if you're a Lego, or you can do it with Axe Core if you're a web geek like me. But yeah, the rulebook says no, and this is really important. So the rulebook is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, or WCAG, or WCAG, or WCAG. WCAG, I don't know. I've given you all of the ways to kind of try and say it, but yeah, so this is the kind of the rule book that I kind of generally refer to. And it has this to say. It says conformance is for full web pages only and cannot be achieved if part of a web page is excluded. So a component by nature is not the web page, it's not the whole story. So if you see this on a component library, be suspicious. I mean, it might be that the components are compliant, but they can't be compliant. They might be accessible, but not compliant. So if you see this, suspicion should arise. It's not always a good sign. But why is this? Why is this the case? It's because of context or lack of context. So a component doesn't have any surrounding page content. You can't know where that component sits within a user's journey, whether that's on the page or whether that's as part of a kind of a wider interaction pattern. Yeah, no context is the thing. So, that was changing. Like, sorry if I've just seared your retinas there. This is an example of some Lego instructions. I told you Lego was going to feature. It looks good. The components look good. The bricks are all valid. Everything looks fine. All the steps look good. Let's take a quick sip of this while you work out what might be going on here. I've led you into a trap. Whoops.
So Lego physically exists. That's it.
Yeah. Yes, Lego physically exists. But what we've ended up with these instructions is, and I love looking at this. I can't get enough of it. It's so good.
I'm still gonna try.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If anyone can manage this, please. Give me a shout. I'd love to catch up with you. But yeah, this is a problematic result. Everything looked good, but yeah, this is called a Penrose triangle, and it's kind of a weird folding, the universe folding in on itself design. Yeah, isn't it good? Yeah. But yeah, this is kind of essentially what we're doing with our products. We focus entirely on components because we're putting them together in a way that's just going to be some issues and problems. Yeah, so in this example, our components all passed all the checks we needed them to, our decisions all seemed good and reasonable, but we've ended up with a broken experience. So, I'll give you some examples of broken experiences because this is where we start, and then I'm going to give you all the solutions afterwards. So, where does component-centric accessibility break down? I'm going to give you 5 examples, and you're going to recognise every single one of them. You're probably going to have some of the bits and bobs in your services and applications that you design. And the key point is that none of them come from broken components. In fact, what you're going to recognise a lot of here is gov.uk stuff, because that, to me, I think is probably the kind of gold standard in terms of accessible stuff that you might build with. It shows that even the most tested, accessible stuff can end up being an inaccessible experience to a lot of people. Subtly as well, not much of this is actually a strict WCAG failure as well. A lot of it is just problematic and about user experience for everybody, but also for certain disabled people who we might be designing for here specifically. So, first example, form errors before submission. And here's an example that you've probably all seen, and this doesn't happen in gov.uk, but I have used their componentry because that's my point. So we've got 3 form fields. We're asking, what is your name? The first form field says first name, middle name, and last name. Our focus is in the second box, in the middle name box, and it has previously been in the first name box, and we've moved it into that second box. Immediately, an error has triggered on the first box. And that's problematic because it interrupts you mid-flow. It's red and it's attention grabbing, can probably create a little bit of unnecessary stress. It also means subtly that your content will slightly jank down the way, making it a bit of a movable target. And then you've also got this is, for me, this is the big one. This is for, if you're a screen reader user, it's noisy, because what happens is, when you move to the second form field, you start hearing the details of the second form field. Once you've finished hearing that, you're going to hear the error message from the first form field. Unless it's coded badly, in which case you're probably actually going to have a better experience. But if it's done correctly with ARIA polite, I'm not going to go down that technical route, then you're probably going to end up with that awkward situation. So this is all about timing and triggers not being defined. The second example is around disabled buttons, and this is probably something you've already seen. This can extend to disabled elements in general, or inactive elements. They can be real problems. So what we've got here is the same question, what's your name? Instead of having 3 form fields, we've got 1. This time our continue button is kind of slightly dimmed, and this is problematic. It's disabled, it's not usable, but what this means is you've got a button that's actually very low contrast. Again, this is part of the gov.uk componentry at this very kind of green level, this level of green. It falls below the contrast levels of 4.1 that were mentioned earlier. That means that a lot of people with low vision might not be able to see it. There's no direct comparison either, so in isolation, is it disabled? Is it active? What's going on here? Is this usable or not? But crucially, our path forward is blocked, so you have to work out what you need to do to make it active and keep an eye out for it becoming active. So yeah, you're putting that extra work on the user, and in this example, it's probably relatively straightforward. But I've seen complicated forms where, yeah, people just don't know how to proceed, and you don't want to start explaining the interface. That's the last thing we wanted to be doing as designers. This is about states and variants not being considered. Our third example is about captions being used as alt text, and I love that this came up earlier as well. This is an example. I'm sorry. This is my dining room table with a big piece of Lego on it. It took nearly a week to build. But yeah, what we've got here is a picture of the Lego Millennium Falcon. I'll just read the caption out for you, because that's my point. It says, the Lego Ultimate Collector Series Millennium Falcon with a round radar dish, and that's important. Thank you. I love that loads of people got that. Taking up almost the whole table it sits on. That's descriptive text, and it's in the caption. So it's visually repetitive. If I'm looking at that, I can see that. You know, that's my kind of take on that. It also might mean that we're left with empty descriptive text for the image. It also might mean we've got the same descriptive text on the image. So you're either leaving blind screen reader users with an empty, it's a confusing experience because there's no image being read out, or it might be that they're hearing the same thing twice. It's like, really? I'm hearing the same thing twice again. So yeah, be nice to your users, essentially. And this is about content undermining accessibility. So with all the best intentions, we're misunderstanding the role that each of the pieces of content has. That was about an image inside a figure with a little fig caption underneath, if anyone's into HTML in the same way that I am. Example 4 is about a page with no clear structure. And this kind of comes back to what's been spoken about earlier. We've got a page about Star Wars, we've got a heading level 1. Overlaying the page, we've got a visualizer, or the visualizer from VoiceOver on a Mac. VoiceOver is a screen reader software, and yeah, it's built into everybody's Mac who has a Mac. There are equivalent pieces of software on Windows. But what this is, it's called the rotor, and what it is you ask it to list something on the page. And in this case, we said, list the headings, please. It's listing one heading, which is accurate because we've got the heading at the top, but there is more content on that page, and I bet we could do better. So it's a big block of homogeneous text. It's kind of difficult to navigate. It's difficult to make a clear mental model of the page as well. Yeah, we can do better than that. And this is about structural semantics not being defined. It's just one example of those structural semantics. And the fifth and final example is about a journey with no chance to review. So we're all rebels. We all want to be part of the Rebel Alliance. So here we have our original question, what is your name? It's a three-part question this time. So it's asking, what's your name? It's asking, why do you want to join the Rebel Alliance? And then it's asking, are you willing to take on dangerous missions? As soon as you've answered that third question, you're in. That's it. You're welcome to the Rebel Alliance is our success page. The problem here is that although all the information you've entered might be valid, it might not necessarily be correct. What if you said no to that last question? What if you wanted to say no, but you clicked yes by accident and enter, and you're in? This is it. Oh no, I'm stuck. The spaceship lands in 10 minutes and you're off. But you signed up to it. So what this does is it reduces our users' confidence, and it doesn't give them that chance to pause and reflect on their answers. And that can be particularly important for some people who might have, say, a hand tremor, where it might be easier to make mistypes or to mistype. That kind of chance to pause at the end is important, and we're not giving that. And that's about incomplete journey patterns, so that's more kind of zoomed out and about kind of interaction patterns through a journey. And these are not edge cases, and that's really important to remember as well. These are all things that happen in everyday design, and they're just 5 of squillions of things that you kind of have to keep an eye out for. So the point I'm making here is that accessible components are really, really important, just like precision-made Lego bricks are. But really it's more about how those components are used that really matters. So it's not just the pieces, in fact, well, it is a little bit the pieces, but it's not entirely the pieces. It's the instructions really that matter. So let's move into part 3. It's that word beyond again. I'm not going to do it. Accessibility beyond the components. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so we'll start with patterns. So this is the kind of the first bit beyond the component level. Components are your building blocks, and patterns are more about how they're used. So you're talking about what to use, how to use it, and why it's used, and that should all be part of your pattern documentation and examples. Let's go back and revisit those 5 examples and see how we can fix them. So we started off with timing and triggers. And what we've done here is we've got exactly the same page, the what's your name with the first, middle and last name. And in this example, we don't have an error message on the first name because we're waiting until the user's ready to submit before we tell them you've done something wrong. Maybe there's some validation issues, there's an empty field, or some characters you're not allowed to enter, or too many characters. So yeah, what we should be doing really is to validate when the users expect it and not before. Don't be causing any unnecessary harassment. Our second example is about states and variants, and this is about how component variants should be used. And this is really straightforward. We did have a what's your name question with a single form field and a disabled button. Now we have a nice active clickable button. And just like in our last example, the user can click that and they'll hit an error if they've clicked it preemptively or prematurely. Or maybe they don't need to. But what we've done is we've always offer that path forward, and we catch people and help them to overcome the problems that they've caused, an empty form field, for example, with some clear error messaging instructions. So this is about avoiding disabled buttons, basically. I mean, it probably goes deeper than that, but disabled elements should really be the UI of last resort. I think there's only ever been one instance in my career where a disabled button actually made perfect sense, but it wasn't something we got to until after, it was weeks and weeks of exploration of different things and some user testing and all sorts of stuff, but actually it was the right thing to do. But until you've explored all of that, don't do it. It's worth that extra time. The third example was about content. So what we've got now is the best present ever, which gives you a little bit of context around that image. It was and is the best present ever. And if you contributed, thanks very much again. That was that. So what the descriptive text is now moved to the image itself, where it should be, and we're using the caption to kind of illustrate and kind of give more information there. So I mean, you could even put the photographer attribution there. It was me. It's not a very good photo either. I realised after I took it that I should have probably taken the chairs away and made things look a little bit less cluttered, but here we are. But yeah, so what the alt text should be doing is describing the image. The caption is about why the image is being used and why it's there in context. And we're looking at avoiding describing images and captions, because captions are for other stuff. Structure was our next thing. So this is about the structural semantics of a page about Star Wars stuff. And you can see here our voiceover rotor is rich, full of 9, is it? Headings, all of different levels. We start off with heading level 1, then we go to a heading level 2, and then we've got a few heading level 3s. And what this lets you do is scan through the page visually, and as a non-sighted user who might be hearing the page content, you can scan through audibly, and you can get a feel for what's on the page, and you can decide whether this page is for you or whether there's a particular part of that page that you want to get to dig in on. I mean, admittedly, you've got, a sentence and a half on each thing, so but for illustration purposes, that probably serves. And that's using headings to introduce hierarchy to a page. And our last example was about journeys and about how things flow on a kind of a higher, kind of zoomed out level. So what we've got here is we've got original 3 questions. At the end, we've got a check answers question. We're saying, here's what you told us. Give it a quick look before you sign your life away, and then you're in. But at least you've had that chance to pause and make sure that yes was the correct answer. So yeah, that's about including a review or a confirmation step in your journey. So they kind of illustrate 5 different angles around design that you can use to make sure you provide a good experience. Are we compliant yet? Sorry, we're not. I'll go back to this quote. This is the WCAG quote. Conformance is for full web pages only and can't be achieved if part of a web page is excluded. In our last example, probably we are compliant because that was about whole pages, but this one here, really it's generally patterns are about things on a page, and again there's going to be more content and context around those. Accessible patterns, just like components, are essential, like good Lego instructions, but it's about how those patterns are used that matters. Accessible patterns aren't the end of the story. And I feel like that kind of leaves you in a place where it's like, okay, so what then? What can we do? And this is what we can do. Systems. So this is about going beyond patterns, and this is about culture, which we discussed at the panel side of things. We talked about workflows. We've got accountability as well. So culture, workflow, and accountabilities. And it's about those 3 things, those that are systemic, being used to kind of make accessibility sustainable, or sustainability accessible over time. So yeah, there's 3 things here. Cheeky sip of water. Yeah, the first is peer review, and this is probably the most important. In fact, it is for me the most important one, and this should happen continuously. It's about sharing and discussion, and that might happen. And this goes for designers, developers, testers, anybody really, any kind of community that's involved in product or production of accessible software. So the sharing and discussion can go across regular meetings, so it might be design huddles or critique sessions, or it might be something a bit more specialist, so it might be about a surgery or clinic session that's run with an accessibility specialist. But it's really important to bring your stuff to those forums, chat about things. It's also about ad hoc meetings as well. So if you're working on something and you're like, well, I can't wait till next Wednesday, whenever the next clinic might be, but you can maybe reach out to an accessibility specialist or just one of your fellow designers or developers and just ask the question, just have a chat about it and see if there's anything you might be able to pull out from it. And there's also the asynchronous methods as well, like Slack and Teams, which are actually nice for visibility. But yeah, those are great ways. You might not get an answer right away, but you will get one eventually. And it might be that you get several, which is always a good thing to get all those different perspectives, because there is no real one true answer to accessibility, because it's design, just like any other design. There's a few different ways of approaching the same problem. But what peer review does is it spots content issues. So on that kind of more micro level, you can prevent interaction gaps quite nicely. And then also that knowledge sharing piece as well. And this goes back to the you don't know what you don't know piece. Because someone else might know something that you don't know. And then you do know the thing that you didn't know. I think. I think. Did that make sense? You know what I mean. You know where I'm driving at. So yeah, just those little knowledge gaps and making sure that everybody's on the same page. And yeah, in case you've missed anything. The second thing that you can use, the second system kind of based approach you can use is testing. And this generally happens during development, although I would recommend testers and developers get involved, just as Simon was mentioning earlier, get involved much earlier in the process. They bring a relatively unique perspective to design. But generally testing is going to happen in built environments, whether they're fully built or whether they're kind of still kind of in flight. And this can happen in two ways. Well, there's the kind of third, the kind of semi-automated, but you've got manual testing and automated testing. And you could use something like Axe Core, which I've mentioned earlier, which is software that you can run on build, or you can use that if your build is a long process, perhaps that might be better to do every sprint overnight and then come in the morning and find out all the problems before you fix them. Or you might use something a bit more manual. You might use your keyboard to tab through, space, up, down keys, get around, see how the interface that's been built works. And you've also got something. That's VoiceOver's logo on the top right, and that's the screen reader I mentioned that you get on Mac and iPad and iPhone. You can use some screen reader software, fire it up, and see how it sounds. And testing does three things. Again, it verifies that implementation is good, makes sure it's sound. It checks the states and timings, and those are difficult to do in the design step unless you're prototyping in code, which makes it a little bit more real. But certainly if you're using Figma or something, the states and timing is difficult, and that's always kind of documentation. But this is for real, this is a built thing. And then you've got the regression side of things, so to make sure that you're always moving in a positive direction from an accessibility point of view. The third thing on the system front is audits, and audits are really cool because what you would do with an audit, or how audits work, is you look to get them periodically, so it might be every 6 months, depending on your maturity as a product, or it might be that you get them every year. But they offer that real specialist depth. I mentioned about developers, quality assurance testers being having that kind of very kind of all day, every day they think about the thing that's being built. And accessibility specialists, all day, every day, they're thinking about accessibility, so they will catch things that you'll miss, I promise. So this is about that outside perspective, and that outside might be someone that's outside your team, but still inside your organisation, or it might be somebody that's actually literally outside your organisation. There's a few, that's Tetralogical, DAC, and my logo up in the top right as well, because why not? Here we are. Bit of self-promotion never hurt anyone, did it? So audits are there to challenge assumptions. So you might have accepted practices internally, but that doesn't mean that they're right. They might be right, but those outside, as well as finding, individual issues, you're gonna get those assumptions challenged by an outside perspective. Especially if there's follow-up to the audit and you get that ongoing engagement with the auditor so that they can help you kind of remediate all the issues that they've raised. They're going to catch missing guidance as well, so things that are missing from your pattern library, from your components. Maybe full components are missing, you need to add, or maybe you've got two things that do too similar a purpose. That catching of missing guidance is really important because you don't necessarily see that when you're looking at your stuff all day long. And then the kind of more of the broader things, this sort of systemic issues about organisational or process problems, those outside perspectives, they don't care if you haven't been given time by your PM to kind of be doing proper accessibility testing. They just say this thing hasn't been tested properly, and you go, well, yes, of course it hasn't because you didn't let me. So that can help sell accessibility internally. So I'll bring you to this. So is there such a thing as an accessible component library? Anybody? No. There is no such thing as an accessible component library, says I, and I hope that proves it. Components aren't enough. You need patterns, you need systems. And it's not a small job, but it is about that kind of steady progress, moving forward all the time. And I will leave you with another quote from me. This is, yeah, sorry, I really should read more, shouldn't I? But yeah, accessibility is how things work in the real world for real people. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Thank you very much for listening. Very kind. Let's stay in touch as well if you want to scan that. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Ooh.
So this is on the Slido. So the first is, what's your take on advice to put in image description in main copy and just have description in copy for alt text?
So sorry?
What's your take on advice to put image description in main copy and just have description in copy for alt text?
Okay, so you kind of have the visible alt text maybe slightly above the image, and then the image itself, the alt text would say description in copy. I think it depends on the constraints you're under, I guess. You might be using a CMS or something which has very limited access. Maybe you can't put an empty alt tag. Maybe, so it depends on those constraints you're under. What I would say is that, it's valid. It's a valid way to do it, but I think probably you would want to empty your alt text in that case because you're already describing the image. But then who's the visible text above the image for? Someone who's listening to the page, and they would get that through the alt text anyway. So I would say you probably don't need that. But
this is me asking. So the reason behind
I think there's a
oh, sorry.
thing coming down.
Thank you. I would do this really badly. The reason behind doing it is that it's not just like 100% blind. You get low sighted.
Yeah.
You get people who don't use assistive tech, so they won't have access to the alt text, but they would still really benefit from an image description, or people who benefit from an interpretation if sometimes they struggle with interpreting visual media. So that's kind of the idea, but you don't want to repeat it. So that's why you put something in the alt text so that a person who can see there's something there, an empty alt text because people don't trust that it's been done properly, they will feel like there's something they're missing. So I just wondered if there was that's what I've been hearing recently, and I just wondered if there was a different,
I love that.
take.
Actually.
Do you want to? Yeah.
I can add to that.
Yeah.
So a survey done by the Canadian National Institute for the Blind found that those with low vision feel excluded when alt text is only embedded in images and not provided, because if they're zooming in, they don't necessarily use screen reading technology because it's a psychological shift to say my vision is now so low I need that extra assistance. So they will magnify up to 24 times. So they are literally seeing one or two letters at a time. So they can't get the entire understanding of the image, but they're not listening to it. And also for cognitive disabilities, research has shown that it's more beneficial to also have the image description with an actual caption, where best day ever and then image description there.
I love that, actually. Now that you've with the kind of context, and that's another exact, like I've done this for years, and always stay hungry or humble, because that's perfect.
Yeah, and to the point where you said the duplication for those listening, they can skip the secondary,
That's
repetition,
true.
right? While the
Yeah.
others don't have that option of getting that information if it's not there.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of judging people by my own low standards there. Like I used to love, I used to love like like you play like The Legend of Zelda or something. I used to be like back when the world was when those worlds were like relatively manageable. I was like, right, I need to find everything. I need to get every piece of heart. I need to do everything. I would be the sort of person that would listen to the end of the second bit of text just in case there was something there that wasn't there the first time round. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's just a. But yeah, I love the idea of but that makes perfect sense as well. Telling in the text, saying that in the image, saying that it's described in text, because yeah, you need that connection. Otherwise, there's nothing in the image description. There we go. Nothing in. I just see it in the corner of my peripheral vision. But yeah, there's nothing in the image text. Then that would be weird, because if you didn't hear there was an image, You're like, well, what image is this describing? You've just heard that this is describing an image, and now there's no image. Yeah, I like it. That's really cool. I guess it depends on how long it is as well. You might want to put it in you could put it in a little detailed summary type component, depending on how lengthy the alt text is. But generally, if you've got lengthy alt text like that, you probably don't want to be. That's not what the image. It's probably a chart or something like that you want to use the table element for, or something other than an image. But yeah, no, that's really interesting. Love it. Thank you.
We've got another question. The story you told, can you tell us why the disabled button was the right call that one time?
Oh, well, okay. Oh, it was about, this is good, that's good. I'm glad you asked that, that's nice. We could be here a while. But yeah, it was about tabs. You know, you have like a tab panel with several tabs across the top. What happens when there isn't enough horizontal space to accommodate all the tabs with the content in each tab? Because you don't want to truncate the content in the tab, because that's bad for everyone. Ironically, actually not for people who are hearing the page, because you probably get all that text. But yeah, the tabs themselves, if they're horizontally aligned and you've got a little bit of content underneath, how do you deal with the overflow? And it was to do with actually the end of it. The end result wasn't, because keyboard users are fine. They're going to tab onto the tab panel, and they're going to use the arrow keys to go between each of the tabs, and then tab off of it into the content when they're ready. Lots of the word tab here. If you're a screen reader user, again, you're probably going to be all right, because you're going to hear the role of the tab, you're going to hear the role of each tab, you're going to go through them, all good. You don't care about horizontal space if you're hearing the page. But it was more about mouse users. So my mouse is nice because a lot of people hate my mouse. It's one of those Apple Magic mouses. It was. I don't think I've ever used that in plural before. But yeah, it was an Apple Magic Mouse, which are nice for scrolling up and down and for scrolling left and right. So I'm fine. I can just put my pointer over it and scroll left and right. But then it was generally Windows users have got an up and down scroll, and it's a physical scroll button. So how do they go left and right? It's do you then hijack the scroll and then the up and down goes left and right, which is a weird experience and kind of disorienting. So it was that, actually. We were like, okay, so we're going to have buttons. The buttons are going to be inaccessible to keyboard users because they're useless to keyboard users, and they're going to be inaccessible to screen reader users because no point for them either. And I'm generalising here because you have many other flavours of use on the web and on applications and things, but to kind of use those kind of slightly simplified avatars or kind of types of user. Yeah, it was this sort of scrolling left and right. So you would have a clickable button with the mouse that would move the tabs to one side. But what happens when you get to the last one? If the button disappears, you're probably going to accidentally click on the last tab. So then, what do you do then? Do you move do you indent the tab? But what if you've got really constrained space? You're on a mobile device. You've got your screen zoomed in. It was just going round and round, and the designers that I was working with, they came up with a really nice idea with a scroll bar underneath, like an always visible scroll bar. But then that had the effect that it would separate the tabs from the content of each tab, which kind of didn't feel, because the whole point of the tab is it's like the metaphor is a piece of paper with a little tab on the top in a filing cabinet, and you go through each one. So that broke their kind of mental connection between it was just a really interesting long process of try this, try that. Oh no, I think we have to use the disabled button when you get to the last tab, or the first tab, because you're going to have to tab back again. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we went. I'm looking at you because you asked the last question. I don't know if you asked that one or not, but it was you. Okay. But yeah, that was probably oversimplified and very quick. But it was the only time that I've ever been able to kind of morally condone the use of an inactive button. Was that? Do I need to explain more, or was that was good? Oh, you asked it. No.
I think
Is there anything else? Ah, thank you very much.